Hey everyone. So today we're going to dive into a really fascinating idea, a kind of paradox at the heart of investing. The single biggest threat to your financial future, well, it's probably you. Or more specifically, it's the brain you're using. Let's get into it.
Here's the thing. When you really boil it down, the math of long-term investing isn't some big secret. We pretty much know how it all works. Stocks, bonds, inflation, the rules of the game are out there. But the wild card, the one thing that can just absolutely wreck everything, it's us. It's our own behavior. It's those gut decisions we make when we're feeling scared or, a little too greedy.
So why are we so bad at this? I mean, what's the deal? Well, the problem is that our brains were built for a totally different world, a world that looks nothing like the stock market. And the very instincts that kept our species alive for thousands of years, well, those are the exact same ones that can absolutely destroy our portfolios today.
I love this phrase for it. We're using our brains off-label. Think about it. We have this incredible survival tool, right? It's been fine-tuned over millions of years to handle immediate physical threats. And now we're asking it to deal with these abstract, long-term financial ideas. It was just never, ever designed for this job.
And this comparison just lays it all out perfectly. On the savannah, being primed for immediate action, like running from a lion, was literally a lifesaver. But in investing, that same impulse leads to panic selling. Being super attuned to threats was great back then, but today it just makes us overreact to every scary headline. And huddling together in a herd meant safety. In the market, it means you're probably buying high when everyone's euphoric and selling low when everyone's terrified. The traits you actually need for investing are the complete opposite.
Dr. William Bernstein really doesn't mince words here. Your limbic system, that's the primal emotional part of your brain. It's the part that's screaming fight or flight. When that part of your brain is making your investment decisions, you're going to have a bad time.
And really, it all comes down to these two big ones, fear and greed. Greed is what kicks in when you see a stock going to the moon and you just have to get in on it, usually right at the top. That's your fear of missing out. And then there's fear. That's the emotion that makes you sell everything when the market is crashing, right at the bottom, just to make the pain stop.
So if our brains are basically wired to fail at this, how in the world do we win? Well, the trick is to completely reframe the game you're playing. The goal isn't to hit home runs. It's not about picking the next Amazon. It's about making fewer mistakes than everybody else.
This amazing concept comes from the investing legend Charlie Ellis. He called it the loser's game. And a loser's game is a game where victory doesn't go to the person making all the brilliant, fancy moves. Nope, it goes to the person who just makes the fewest simple mistakes. And the best analogy for this is tennis. Pro tennis, that's a winner's game. Pros win by hitting these unbelievable aces and drop shots that their opponent just can't touch. But what about amateur tennis, the kind you and I play? That is a loser's game. You almost always win because the other person just messes up. They hit the ball into the net or they hit it out of bounds. So your best strategy isn't trying to hit a 120-mile-per-hour serve. It's just to keep the ball in play and wait for your opponent to make a mistake.
And this is the absolute key takeaway. For pretty much all of us, the 99.9%, investing is a loser's game. We are the amateurs on the court. Our best shot at winning is to stop trying to make those brilliant moves and just focus on avoiding the big, dumb mistakes, like selling in a panic or chasing some hot trend.
And the data backs this up in a pretty shocking way. When you look at the research, it turns out that a tiny, tiny fraction of stocks, we're talking about 2%, are responsible for basically all of the market's long-term returns. So the odds of you or I consistently picking those few needles out of that giant haystack, they're just not good.
In fact, it's so ridiculously hard that even the people who do this for a living can't do it. Over a decade, more than 90% of professional fund managers, the guys in suits who are paid millions to pick stocks, fail to beat a simple, boring market index. They're playing a winner's game, and they're losing.
Okay, so if we accept that we're playing a loser's game, what's the playbook? How do we actually win by not losing? The good news is, it's actually incredibly simple.
The whole playbook is really just 4 rules. First, automate everything. Set up automatic contributions and just take your emotional, twitchy brain out of the equation. Second, diversify broadly. You don't have to find the one winning stock if you just own a tiny piece of all of them. Third, minimize costs. Fees are a guaranteed loss, so keep them as low as humanly possible. And finally, number 4, check infrequently. Seriously, the more you look at your portfolio, the more likely you are to do something dumb.
You know, the founder of Vanguard, Jack Bogle, just summed up that diversification rule perfectly. Why would you spend all your time and energy hunting for a single needle in a haystack when you can just buy the whole haystack? Just buy a low-cost index fund and you're guaranteed to own all the winners. And let's talk about those costs for a second, because this is so important. A portfolio that charges, say, 2% in fees versus one that charges 0.5%, it might not sound like a huge difference from year to year, but over 30 years? Oh man, the difference is absolutely massive. That seemingly small fee can eat up a fifth or more of your entire nest egg. It is the single biggest unforced error that so many people make. All right, so you've got the perfect plan. You're automated, you're diversified, but there's one last enemy you have to deal with, and that is the noise. The financial media is basically a machine that is expertly engineered to push all your worst emotional buttons.
You really have to understand their business model. Their product isn't the news, it's you. It's your attention. They sell your eyeballs to advertisers. And what grabs attention better than anything? Fear, panic, drama. A calm, sensible message like "stay the course" doesn't get clicks, but a headline screaming about a market crash, now that gets clicks.
And one of their best tricks is a little cognitive bias we all have called denominator blindness. This is where they throw a big, scary-sounding number at you, but with zero context, so you have no idea what it actually means.
I mean, come on, you've seen this exact headline 1,000 times, right? Market plunges 500 points. It sounds terrifying. It gets that fight or flight response going in your brain. It makes you feel like you have to do something right now.
But you have to stop and ask the question, what does 500 points actually mean? On its own, that number is completely and utterly meaningless.
Context is everything. Look at this. A 500-point drop in the Dow Jones when it's trading at 38,000? That's just a 1.3% dip. It's a totally normal, boring day in the market. But that exact same 500-point drop in the S&P 500 when it's at 5,500, that would be a 9% crash, a huge historic event. The media uses the big raw number because it sounds scarier, and it preys on our brain's inability to instinctively add that context.
And that really brings us to the final question you have to ask yourself. The real work of investing isn't just about protecting your money from the markets or the economy. It's about building a system, a mindset that protects your money from your own worst instincts, from those hardwired, predictable, and totally human mistakes. The real game is protecting your money from yourself.